Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out. My name is LaToya Gale. I'm here with my friend Sarah Drisu, and we wanted to have this rally because when we heard George Floyd cry to his mother as he was dying, we knew that it was our duty as mothers to summon all mothers and to summon all mothers to stand in support of Black lives, because Black lives matter not just when we die and how we die, but it matters how we live. And so we've asked you to come here today because we do want to talk about police brutality and public safety reform, but we want to talk about all aspects of systemic racism and how that affects a Black life. And so we have a lineup of speakers here for you today to talk about different aspects of Black lives, because Black lives matter all the time. And before we get started doing anything, I want us to acknowledge that this country has original sins. And one of those original sins is that we are standing on Indigenous land right now. We are standing on the land of the Wampanoag people. And so some of us came to this country looking for freedom and a better life. Some of us were brought here against our will, and some of us were already here for generations, so many generations that we cannot count. And I want us to acknowledge that before we start anything today. And I also want to thank the village, and we'll do this in more detail later, but I also want to thank the village that has come out, and we pulled this together in a couple of weeks, but we could not have done that without the village, because motherhood is radical and powerful, and that is how all this was able to be. And we do want everyone to keep your mask on. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and we want moms to be safe. We don't want anybody to be sick. There are bathrooms around the corner to my left. There is a first aid station there if you need it. Please stay hydrated. We have plenty of water and snacks as well for everyone. So please take advantage of that. And we're gonna get started. I'm gonna introduce Jessica X over here. She's a lovely, talented artist here, a Boston native. And we're gonna start by singing Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift Every Voice and Sing is known as the Black national anthem. And so some of you, this might be your first time hearing it. The lyrics are very poignant and meaningful. It was written by James Weldon Johnson as a poem, and then his brother set it to music. And I hope you guys enjoy that song for the people who are for the first time hearing it, and please sing along if you do know it. And so I wanna invite Jessica to the mic before we start anything else.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the hope that the dark past has taught us sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on. Let us march on. Let us march on until victory is won.
Miss Carla, can you come up here? Okay, the first person that we're gonna have speak with you guys all today, we know that there are a lot of names that are famous, and we mentioned George Floyd at the top when I introduced myself today, but we have a mother here today who is from Boston, whose son was killed by the Boston police in 2012. And Carla is here to tell you her story. And this is a local story because I want us to remember that when we talk about this being systemic, that it happens here, it happens everywhere, and we want to work together to change that. So, go ahead.
And as Latoya said, this is a local story, but we know it needs to be a national story. We know that stories are coming out, and this must be one of them. And so please listen to her and take action.
I'm gonna take this down for a second. Whew. My name is Carla Sheffield, and I've lived in Boston my whole life. As soon as my mother had me, she hopped on the first train smoking and came here. I am 54 years old, and my whole entire life has been here as a Massachusetts resident. So when I see our community in our town rising up for Black men and Black brothers across the country, I'm all for it. But I'm also for taking care of home front. Let's not forget about the children, the Black men that were killed here, like my son, Barrel Anthony Ramsey. For 8 years, have been looking for justice. And I'm gonna give you a little background on it. When it first happened, I could not tell my story because there were so many barriers. The attorney would say, don't say anything, or they'll twist your words around. The police wouldn't let go information that was pertinent to investigating. But the police did investigate themselves. They took all the time necessary. I felt like the investigation was to clear the officer and not to look for the truth. From the point of my son being killed to the not guilty verdict that was received in the end, the whole thing was a joke to me. And being a person with a master's in criminal justice, as I watched all these lies unfold in front of me for them to tell my son's story, I had no choice but to live with that because, one, I'm a Black angry woman as they compare us. Two, I don't have the money to fight the system. I don't have the money to appeal. And three, we don't have many attorneys standing up to fight for us without looking for the almighty dollar. Because I have a background in criminal justice, I was not letting this go. On August 21, 2012, there was a so-called call from the South End that went to the police department that said a young man was peering in people's cars. Somehow it went from a young man peering into a car to pulling my son over in a gold Cadillac in the South End. Now, mind you, I lived 10 years in the South End, so everybody in the South End knew my son. So for them to insinuate that my son was peeking in cars when he was driving a car, that was the first thing that got to me. They pulled my son over, chased my son down the street, killed my son, and then justified it. Their excuse was the officer is from a good family. Well, I'm here to tell you, so isn't my son. My son came from a good family also. It hurts when I stand here because I've been a huge part of the community. But when they killed my son, it was like I was no more a part of the community. No police officer reached out to me. It seemed like everything that I was trying to do moving forward, barriers were put in my way. The police officers pulled my son over. My son had just gotten his license. He was driving his friend's car. His friend happened to already be in jail. So my son was using his friend's car to take his friend's girlfriend to work just so he can have a car to drive because he had just gotten his license, and that was the whole thing of him driving. So when they pulled him over, I didn't find this out until we got through court, but there was a black officer on one side of the car and a white officer on the other side of the car. When they pulled my son over, my son asked, "Why are you pulling me over?" He did not respond. My son kept asking. My son had the window down a little bit so they could talk. When they asked for my son's license and registration and they didn't respond to why he was pulling them over, my son finally gave them the license. Now, in court, it was said the black officer on this side of the car had a warrant that had a young man's name on it. The white officer who took my son's ID license claimed he didn't look at it. He put it on top of the car. The other officer said he never touched my license, so my son's license. So my question is, if you are pulling somebody over and you have a warrant, isn't the first thing you're going to check is that person the same person on the warrant? You can't arrest somebody if you're going for a certain person and it's not that person. You have to make that clear. They didn't do that. They didn't tell my son that. So they took the license, sat it on top of the car, reached inside the car and tried to grab my son. My son took off and drove down into Tent City where we live. He jumped out the car and kept running. As he was running, the police were running down the street saying, "I'm going to get you, mother effer. When I catch your ass, you're not going to like it." They were shouting, "I'm going to get you," all the way down there, calling him all kinds of curse words. My son ran to a room where it used to be a teen center. The door was locked. As he got there, the officer's story is, as he was chasing my son turned around and shot at him. And that caused him to return fire, and he said he shot my son in the chest. So when I got the autopsy that was hand-delivered to me, for some reason, I kept calling for it and I couldn't get it. Somebody knew they were trying to, and I shouldn't say this, so I'm just going to say I got the autopsy, and it said different things than what they put in court. This is so hard. I've done a lot of programs that would help me stand here and tell my story, but the pain always comes back. Regardless of how strong you are, it always comes back. And then to go through the system and not get justice hurts even more. So when I see our mayor and our commissioners saying George Floyd, God rest in peace, George Floyd, and because of his death, we have the moment. We have to seize on this moment. But when the officer said that my son fired shots at him and he returned fire, shooting him in the chest, the autopsy showed that my son was shot in the side. The police officer's story changed 4 times from the time my son was killed to the time we got out of court. He even went home and told his father that he had just killed a black person. They wouldn't bring his father into court. The things that they bring into court, it should not be just for the prosecutor. They pick and choose what evidence comes in. So the evidence they brought in all favored the police officer. They wanted to use my son's background because he had been in trouble before. We couldn't use the officer's background. He's been in trouble before too. You can't make rules and pick and choose what's good for one and what's good for the other. Let's stop hiding behind our titles. Enough is enough. If you are a police officer, be a police officer. Stop hiding behind that qualified immunity, because you're not qualified and you shouldn't be immune from killing my son, period. When I first found out about my son, it wasn't a police officer who came and told me, it was kids from off the street. I did my own investigation from what I heard from the street, the police report, the police officer's report. I took all that and put it together. I work in a court. I got a master's in criminal justice. You are not just going to tell me anything and slide this under the rug. Everybody kept saying, oh, you can't file a case against the police. Oh, you can't get the police in court. I did all that. But what good is all that if we still have biased white judges sitting at the realm who don't give a damn about a black life? I've been sitting here because I'm a judge. I've earned this spot up until now. But now it's just your bias and your unconscious, your blatant biases that's ruling the court, and it shouldn't be like that. It should not be like that. There was not a jury of my son's peer. My son is African American. There was 12 white jurors. The first question, and this whole system needs to be overhauled, from the judge that are sitting there with tenure, time to go, to the clerk magistrates that just keep not allowing police reports to be filed. You should be able to walk into a court and file a police report and not have to explain why you're filing it, period. The avenue to file a charge against a police officer should not be a barrier. Getting justice and not having the money to appeal a case should not be a barrier to getting justice. Justice is supposed to be free for everybody, not just who you pick and choose. I want to recite a poem that I wrote 3 months after my son was murdered. And this will speak to how I really feel. We are called to the front line as mothers. When you heard George Floyd call his mother, he was also summoned in every single solitary mother, grandmother, aunt, sister, niece to come to the front line, because we can fight them all. We fight our own black men. We fight the system with employment. We're fighting education for our kids, healthcare, but we are always at the front line fighting. So we must continue as women to lead this front line fight. I entitled my poem, Hey Officer, but after I wrote it, I didn't think he was worthy of it. And it goes like this. Hey officer, I miss my son. I miss my child. You took him from me and hid all the while. I miss my son's face. My heart's in a broken place. You took my son without my permission. Now I'm crying, praying, and wishing for justice to be served, because if nothing else is what I deserve. You pretend to protect and serve. You got a nerve. You carry a badge and gun, expect a brother not to run. You wear a uniform pretending to be a cop. When he asks you not to, you raise your gun and shot. Now I'm left to wrap this around my head. The Boston police just shot my son dead. No words of comfort, you said nothing nice. I hope to hell this haunts you for life. A mystery shooter, I know it's weird. He shot my son and disappeared. It wasn't a child from off the street. It was Boston police that walked the beat. Oh yeah, you said he opened fire, but we all know that's cold, you liar. That's what your super told you to say. It makes it easier to clear you that way. Our children are dropping time after time, but to be shot by police, now that's a crime. Then to say his death wasn't violent, it was to me, because my life was silence. As my story comes to an end, how do I tell my 7-year-old police are your friend? You reap what you sow, and just so you know, as Barrel's mother, I'll never let this go.
Thank you so much. We're going to get a picture. We don't leave here. Don't leave anywhere. We want to thank Carla so much for sharing that story. I just presented Carla with some roses. We have the brothers from Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity out here in the crowd with red shirts. They have roses, so they'll be passing those out to our mothers to honor our mothers here today. And Sarah, there you go.
I just want to say his name. Barrel Anthony Ramsey White. Our next speaker is someone who I deeply admire, and many of us do too, and is courageous beyond words. None other than District Attorney Rachel Rollins.
and Victoria. So thank you, Carla, for sharing your story. You have turned unimaginable grief into action because no other mother should have to experience what you have endured. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here today, and yet I speak to you with a heavy heart, trying to put into words the feelings that I cannot fully understand or process. I've said weeks ago, I am heartbroken, furious, and completely exhausted. I see history repeating itself over and over again. Barrel Anthony Ramsey White, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, Elijah McClain, Cornelius Fredericks, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland. The list of names is thousands long and centuries old. Black lives not just lost, but stolen and taken and ripped from us. I say us because they are ripped from our communities, our neighborhoods, our homes, but their families, their siblings, children, partners, fathers, and mothers, they don't just mourn, we break. As the mother of a beautiful, brilliant, talented, determined, and exceptional Black daughter, and an auntie to two of my beautiful nieces, this is one of them, I am painfully aware and personally aware of how many in this country view my children. I see potential, and so do many of you. Some see a threat. I wonder whether or not our country, all of us, will have the courage and the fortitude to truly ensure not one more. Can we finally stop history from repeating itself? And although not law enforcement involved, we can't forget ever, but certainly not in Pride Month, Rhea Milton and Dominique Remy Fells, who are two Black trans women of a long list of Black trans women who have been murdered. We must confront our past in order to build a more just and equitable future. We need to do the work. We need to have honest and uncomfortable conversations. We have not had an atonement or a reckoning. Germany, South Africa, Guatemala, other places have looked at their shameful past, the genocides that they have had. You can't walk in Germany for a few blocks without seeing some memorial to the horror, and they acknowledge what they did, and they're better because of that. Yes, we don't condone the genocide, of course not, but they acknowledge that harm so that they can start moving forward. We have yet to do that in the United States. And racism is not only this country's original sin, it is our mutating virus. We went from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration, and now we are seeing, due to cell phones, what many communities knew well before that, police brutality. And racism, I'm sorry, is not just a few bad apples. It's the result of carefully crafted systems that were designed to control, monitor, punish Black, brown bodies. The system is working exactly the way it was set up to work. This is the failure of anti-racism. It is a product of refusing to face the things we need to change. And I want to say something. The police have been getting a lot of slack as a result of the horrific things we've seen some individuals do. And I won't call them officers. It disgraces the name of the many good men and women that go to work every day and treat us with dignity and respect. And there are some. However, it is not just the police. DAs are failing you as well. When you think about Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, and you watch that video of the McMichaels, father and son, hunting that Black man, and you also see the videos of white couples walking into that abandoned property, they're still alive. Of white children walking in to look at that abandoned property, they're still alive. But Ahmaud was hunted and killed by Travis McMichael. We now know he uttered a racial slur as Ahmaud breathed his last breaths. And 3 district attorneys watched that video and did nothing until the Georgia Bureau of Investigations swooped in, and within 24 hours, they charged the McMichaels family with felony murder and their co-conspirator with felony murder as well. Those are 3 district attorneys that failed this country. We are just as much to blame as police, because when we willfully look the other way, it emboldens people to continue harming, hurting, and executing us. So herein lies the complication and the opportunity. I am not just a Black woman who has been impacted by racism and racial disparities. I am your elected district attorney, and very proud to be so. I am part of a larger criminal legal system that disproportionately impacts poor Black and brown people. And poor people are the most impacted, of every color. It is better to be rich and guilty than poor and innocent in our system, to quote the fabulous Brian Stevenson. I need to actively, aggressively, and continually combat that reality. And very quickly, what I'm proud of is I ran on a platform of 15 areas of crimes, low-level, non-violent, non-serious crimes, where in the first instance, we aren't going to think about putting you in jail. We are very good at putting people in jail. We're going to look at the root cause of the problem, because about 60% of the people that come into contact with the criminal legal system of those crimes are mentally ill, have a substance use disorder, food or housing insecurity, or are homeless. And I would rather focus on the root cause of that problem so we never see them again until they come back and work for our office. And please, a real example of this, George Floyd was murdered, was executed for a $20 bill that was counterfeit. That is not a felony, not even in Alabama and Mississippi or Kentucky. It is a misdemeanor, and they don't have the death penalty for that. But in 8 minutes and 46 seconds, Derek Chauvin tried, convicted, sentenced, and executed George Floyd as he screamed and cried for his mother. Those lists of 15 are for the George Floyds. If that were implemented, he would still be alive today. And every police department in the nation implemented that list of 15 when COVID-19 happened, because they're no longer arresting people for non-violent, non-serious crimes. They're issuing tickets and summonses. So it just took a global pandemic for them to recognize that we were right in Suffolk County all along. We have also created the first in the nation discharge integrity team. So when an officer discharges his or her weapon in Suffolk County, or discharges their duty and somebody is harmed or killed, we have a community member who runs a public community health center, a criminal defense lawyer, a retired judge, and a member of law enforcement, and me. We don't even meet in my office, and those cases are presented to all of us. So the community has a voice in what is happening, and it is not just in a silo where one person makes that decision. We are also transparent, and I have made it clear that when people are unhappy with what our office does, we will always look back to make sure we got it right, because no profession is perfect, including police and DAs. So I'm trying to change a system that was designed for people who look like me, but with people like me. It was designed by people who do not look like me, but with people who look like me directly in mind. The work is difficult and often painful, but it is necessary. I need your help, and I think you might need mine. Please call on me, and I will call on you. We must all march like mothers, fight like mothers, and love like mothers. That is how we're going to build lasting change. Let's go. Thank you.
Thank you, DA Rollins, for coming out today. And thank you again Carla. And we want to take this time right now to set the intention for our day. Me and Sarah talk to each other a lot. And we talk to each other as Black women living in a white world, and we talk to each other as Black mothers. And when we saw all the uprisings and the protests happening, we cried with each other, and then we said, let's pray on what we should do. And we came up with that we should gather mothers, because there is power in motherhood. Mothers have a radical love. I said to Sarah, have you ever been at a playground and you heard a child that was not your own say mommy? When you're a mother, all heads turn. It doesn't have to be your child. And if necessary, you intervene. You wait until you see that child is taken care of and you intervene. If you see a mother out as another mother struggling, you say, sister, do you need some help? And that is what we're doing here now. Black mothers are in pain. This is not the first time that we have had to talk to our children. I have 3 children. My oldest son is 14. He's bigger than his father. He's growing facial hair. His voice is deep. And I worry for my son. And I shouldn't have to worry for my son. Sarah is 10 years younger than me. And her son is 18 months old. And she has that same worry for her child. My mother is 83. She had that same worry for her brothers. I don't have any brothers. For her nephews. We should not have to worry about our children. Our skin color shouldn't be a burden. And what we are asking our mothers to do is to help us to shoulder that burden with us. We're asking you, as the sign says, to have a duty to intervene when you see injustice being done to anyone's child. And we want you to do that with the radical love of motherhood. We've had many civil rights movements in this country, and oftentimes men are center. But what we're saying is we want to bring that feminine energy to this fight, because there's something radical and special about that. And we want to do it with love. And so we know that we are tired, and we know we have a lot of fighting to do. But we want to do it with love, and we want everyone here to pour into each other, because we have a lot of fighting to do, and to make that weight lighter and to make that fight shorter. And so, go ahead.
Thank you, LaToya. Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking to each other, as LaToya says, and thinking and plotting. And so it's really wonderful to see that and turn into this. The moment where I knew we had to do something might be the moment that you felt like you had to do something too. When George Floyd yelled out, "Mama," raise your hand if you felt a gut instinct to do something. Thank you. He cried out for his mother, and now we are here. This is our answer. But do not stop by just showing up. We want to make sure we build a community that will incubate action after this and beyond. We have people from all walks of Boston standing right here in Copley Square. I live around the corner from here, and for a long time I felt unwelcome. So it is radical for me to bring my community here and to say we will not stand for inequality. We will not stand for disparate wealth, where Black people are worth $8 as compared to white people who are worth hundreds of thousands, about 200,000 in Massachusetts. We will not stand for the fact that when a Black woman goes to the hospital and there is a baby in her stomach, she is 3 times more likely to die. I am also standing at near the hospital where I got care, and my care looked different than other women, and I knew it. And I hope they can hear me. So the actions we take today is to improve the daily lives of Black people, not just in death, but in life. So it is not enough just to say their names. I will not wait for another hashtag. I will make sure that every day my life ensures that when I hear the next hashtag, I can say I am doing something about it. And you are too. So thank you.
We want to honor the fallen by saying a tiny fraction of the countless names. Please repeat. Barrel, Anthony, Ramsey, White. Barrel, Anthony, Ramsey, White. George Floyd. Ahmaud Arbery. Breonna Taylor. Rayshard Brooks. Elijah McClain. Andrés Guardado. Justin Howell. Sean Monterosa. Jamel Floyd. Sandra Bland. Tatiana Jefferson. Eric Garner. Michael Brown. Philando Castile. Tamir Rice. Freddie Gray. Tanisha Anderson. Jamar Clark. Terrence Crutcher. Antoine Rose II. Jeremy McDowell. O'Shea Terry. Botham Jean. Walter Scott. Laquan McDonald. Alton Sterling. Stefan Clark. Trayvon Martin. Presente.
Can I have Jessica? I'm looking for you wherever you are in the crowd. There we go. Like we said earlier, we want to speak about different aspects of Black life and the things that make Black lives matter. And today we have Jessica Thomas here. Jessica, come on. Jessica works in the mayor's office. Jessica is a realtor. Jessica is going to speak to us about Black economic justice today. There you go.
Thank you so much. So I'll start with a personal story about myself. I remember sitting in a kitchen the day after I brought my daughter home from the hospital. I was 19 years old, living with my mother and working overnight as a cab dispatcher. I also remember getting called back to work 4 days after getting out of the hospital because our office was short-staffed. After I got that phone call from my boss, I cried myself to sleep for 2 reasons. For one, I wasn't ready to go back to work. I had an infant baby, and the thought of going back after a couple of days was scary. But it was also the first time in my life I realized I didn't set myself up to be financially stable enough to stay home with her. So I sat in the kitchen and I made a list of things I needed to do, and I promised myself I would get a better job and purchase a house one day. A few months later, I got a job as a bank teller and I worked my way up. And 4 years after that, I was closing on a condo by the age of 24. So, and as I sit here almost 10 years later, the best feeling in the world comes from breaking the generational curses and labels that society tried to put on me for being a young Black mother. A few years after that, I bought another house, but this time it was for my mother, who rented her whole life. Yeah. And in the midst of buying properties, I became a real estate agent and learned how people were building wealth in this field and why it was important for myself and the legacy I plan to leave behind. So today I stand here as a public servant, a real estate entrepreneur, a businesswoman, the founder of a nonprofit, and the mother of two beautiful, vibrant Black children. So when I think about motherhood and economic justice, I say this: don't be afraid to go and get what belongs to you. The sacrifices you make for your family will pay off. Trust the process. And make sure you connect with each other while you're here. We have some of the most amazing women in the crowd who could change your life with one simple conversation. So let's stand in solidarity as mothers today, and let's stand in solidarity as we work together to achieve economic prosperity. Thank you.
I'm actually really excited to introduce our next speaker. She was my former student when I was a teacher in the 7th grade, and I've seen her grown up. And since she was very young, she'd ask me very critical questions as one of the only Black teachers in that building. And we had conversations late into the night, and I'd drive her home, ask her mom permission for her to stay after school. And a lot of our conversations revolved around race and inequality. And now she's an activist. Needless to say, I feel proud. And I know you will too. So I'm gonna welcome Hannah Parker, a youth poet.
Hello, everybody. This poem is called Being Black is No Small Feat. If you guys would like, I have an artist page called Verbally Express that you can follow if you like what I do. So here I go. Being Black is no small feat. It's praying for the liberation of our next generation. It's praying for your release of the depression that is oppression. It's finding the energy to be kind to white people after all of their reoccurring transgressions. You see, I'd be lying if I told you I wake up every morning ready to write my pain into a summer sunset. There are days where the reality of our grief swallows me into an abyss, where our pain leaves my skin scorching hot and my eyes fiery red. There are days where I have to cleanse my mind of the first video, the second video, and the next video, where inhaling and exhaling feels a lot like survivor's guilt. There are days where I feel nothing, where numbness becomes protection, where vengeance and exhaustion release me of its stronghold, where joy wraps around my body like a long-lost lover, where stillness sings me a song to salvage what I have left of serenity slowly, quietly, thankfully, anxiously, until I have to rock myself back into rebellion. Being Black is having to pick between the next protest or your mental health. It's having to gauge whether running the risk of dying for your freedom or living in your lament is a wise enough decision for the day. Being Black is knowing that no system in this country was ever created to serve or protect you. That your sister's murderer still roams the streets with a license to kill. That even as I birth my baby, I'm 2 to 6 times more likely to die from birth complications than a white woman. That there are jail cells being crafted at the thought of my unborn child. There are Black girls who are suspended for talking back when they just needed someone to listen to them. There are Black boys who are treated like lethal weapons when the school guards are the ones who carry them. There are transgender Black people who are pushed out of their schools, out of their jobs, out of their families when there's no difference between their and our humanity. Being Black is no small feat. I'm going to say it again. Being Black is no small feat. It's not just street slang, the latest dance, baby hairs and edges. It's not just nice skin, protective styles, and Black men you use as accessories. Being Black is holding the weight of life and death inside you, is knowing that no matter how smart, how vogue-worthy, how articulate you are, you can never talk yourself out of your skin, out of a job you were denied because your name sounded too Black, out of a lineage that has been systemically deprived of their right to live a meaningful life. Being Black is no small feat. So will you vouch for my humanity when they stop sharing Instagram posts about systemic oppression? Will you push for diversity and equity when no one is pushing you to? Will you defend my 4C hair when your boys at the table say my hair is too kinky, too nappy? Will you deem my Black worthy of love when it talks too loud, when it takes up too much space, when its nose is too wide? Will you still deem my Black worthy of love when it's unconventional? Will you treat a Black child like your own? Will you treat a Black person like a person for once?
Give Hannah another round of applause. That was so powerful. And I'm really honored. My name is Marissa Luce, and I'm very honored to be introducing this next slate of speakers. These, in my opinion, are freedom fighters in the Black maternal health movement. And we're gonna first kick it off with Dr. Ndidiamaka Amuta Onukaga. And Dr. Didi is just amazing, and you all will experience that very soon. She received her PhD in public health with a focus on maternal and child health at the University of Maryland, College Park School of Public Health in 2010. She received her master's in public health from the George Washington University School of Public Health and the Health Services in Maternal Health and Child Health in 2005. Her dissertation focused on infant mortality in Washington, D.C., and it specifically examined neighborhood-level disadvantage, social determinants of health, and race and equity as predictors of infant mortality. Dr. Amata Onukaga also received her BS in public health and BA in Africana Studies from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Currently, Dr. Amata Onukaga is an associate professor at Tufts University in the Department of Public Health and Community Medicine. In this capacity, her research focuses on adverse birth outcomes for women of color, HIV/AIDS, and women of color in an urban context, and community-based participatory research. She's also the visionary behind a Black maternal health conference that happens here for the last few years, and also the visionary behind Black Maternal Health Advisory Council. Without further ado, Dr. Didi.
Good afternoon, my people. Good afternoon, my people. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure. The pleasure is mine. I just want to say a few remarks about, first of all, shout out to the March Like a Mother crew. Like, pulling this together in such a short time is no easy feat. So, good afternoon. I bring you greetings. And for me, I want to tell just the tale of two people in one. So, as you guys heard, my 9 to 5, I'm an associate professor at Tufts University School of Medicine. I host a conference on Black maternal health every April during Black Maternal Health Week. But really, I'm a revolutionary that just happens to be housed in the academy. And my goal is to take the resources of these institutions to the academy. So, I've been in Boston for a few years now, and I think for me, what I'm noticing here in Massachusetts is there's tremendous opportunity to address the systematic and systemic racism and oppression of Black and Brown people. And one thing I will say, in a place like Boston, that's a healthcare mecca, we see so many resources, we see tremendous facilities and tremendous opportunity. We know that Black and Brown women are still being marginalized, still being mistreated, still being discriminated against in labor and delivery when they go into the hospitals. And for me, it really has been quite humbling and quite surreal, but also very reaffirming. As a new mother myself, I have a 14-month-old toddler. He's beautiful. Shout out to my husband over there, Honey Wave. And so, for me, as someone that studies maternal mortality, morbidity, someone that's committed to doing this work, in my own labor and delivery experience, there definitely was, shall we say, some missteps, some missed opportunities. And so for me, I just feel a very urgent need to dismantle this system. Massachusetts often rests on its laurels as a place that has so many resources, but when you really look at the data and you look at the rates by race, we know that Black and Brown women are still being mistreated, and we know that overall, the United States is failing horribly at addressing maternal mortality in communities of color. So the relationship between systemic racism, poor birth outcomes, and adverse outcomes for women, it's not happenstance. We know that communities of color are targeted and disenfranchised, and we know that there's not enough of us in senior leadership in these spaces and in these rooms where these decisions are being made. And so I would just urge all of you to officials accountable, make sure that people are doing what they say they're going to do. If you go into a clinical encounter and something doesn't feel right, shout out to my pregnant and parenting moms out there. This is the opportunity for you to say, you know what? This doesn't sound like what I need to be doing. If I'm not feeling this OB, this nurse practitioner, this midwife, this receptionist, whoever it is, then that's where you think about shifting your change and shifting where you're going to deliver and where you're going to get your care. These institutions are beholden to us. They are here to serve us. This is not a luxury. This is what they were trained for. This is what they went to school for. This is what they took the Hippocratic Oath for, to make sure that Black and Brown women are not mistreated. And so I would just urge all of us to use our collective voices. I believe in the power of the written word, op-eds, events like this, QI boards, write letters to the president. Everyone is being held accountable. So we have to work together to dismantle these systems. We have to reduce these rates. Black women are 243%, y'all, more likely to die than their white counterparts. If that doesn't just blow your mind every day, I don't know what else will. And, I think I'm so grateful for this gathering, because I think the audacity of hope is still there, right? Even when we see what's happening, say their names, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McDade, Sandra Bland, George Floyd, and so many others. And I think for me, this is the beginning of an opportunity. This is building on what's already been there, but it's also a chance for us to step up as a community together and address these things. So from wherever you sit, in the community, in the academy, in the hospital, in all these institutions, we need to do a better job collectively of addressing these things. So thank you all. I will definitely be around if anybody else wants to talk, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the organizers and all of you for joining us here today, and thank you so much.
Another round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Didi. All right. So next we have Nashira Barrel. I love this woman. She's just such a powerful, dynamic woman, and the mother of two amazing children. Nashira is a Black cis woman, is a daughter and granddaughter of midwives who birthed both of her children at home, and has experienced firsthand the transformative experience and liberation of midwifery support. She is also the project director of Boston's Neighborhood Birth Center in the city. Let me finish the sentence. The city's first freestanding birth center startup. And so let's give this a round of applause. So she says she's the project director, but let's be clear, she is the visionary behind this movement. And so I just want to make sure that that is acknowledged. She's so humble. with a master's degree in maternal and child health from Boston University School of Public Health and nearly 20 years experience designing and implementing public health strategies to advance racial equity. Nashira brings both head and heart to the design and implementation of public health strategies that advance justice and equity. Nashira also works as a Human Impact Partners doing capacity building for health equity and racial justice, and has a small consulting practice focused on training and organizational development for equity. Nashira is originally from Connecticut and resides in the Mattapan neighborhood of Boston with her husband and 2 children. Nashira.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you. I've been feeling a lot of dissonance lately. Dissonance as defined as trying to reconcile the tension between disharmonious events. A few days after George Floyd's murder, I was sitting on my parents' house in Rhode Island in our COVID pod, working on the deck, while within earshot, my 2.5-year-old was holding court at the compost, tending to the red wiggler worms, directing them to the avocado pit and away from a random clamshell. And a few feet away on the other side was my husband inside working. In between each work call he would make calls to his friends, and each one of them would start like this: "Hey, black man, how you living?" And what followed after that was a painful conversation to bear witness to. He spent much of the time of those 2 weeks we were in Rhode Island inside the house because of the increased police presence with the reopening of Rhode Island beaches. I was, and I am still, experiencing dissonance. As the mother of 2 black babies, 7 and 2.5, I'm witnessing them love the freedom of this COVID summer, as strange as that sounds. While we haven't left the postage stamp of our backyard in Mattapan, this is as big as we've seen in a long time. There's no camp, no school, no daycare, nowhere to be. And they are experiencing joy in the sprinkler and in the garden, while my heart and the world weeps and rages around us. That is dissonance. Black grief and black joy. In early April, Arundhati Roy, an Indian author and political activist, wrote a piece called "The Pandemic as Portal." In it, she offered up that disasters and crises like pandemics are pattern interrupters, that this pandemic is offering us an opportunity to break out of the trance of dominant consciousness. She wrote about the global longing for a return to normal, that nothing could be worse than a return to normality. This pandemic is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little baggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. The pandemic is a portal. So the call to lean into this moment, thick with pandemic and police and vigilante violence, has resonated with me in recent months. I'm working to open a birth center, poised to be the first freestanding birth center in Boston. Thank you. And on that first Saturday when COVID hit my neighborhood, and we started sheltering in place, I got the first of what would become 24 more. I got another 2 this week of inquiries. The voice on the other end of the line or through the text is super pregnant and asking, "Is your birth center open?" And to every inquiry in the last 3 months, my answer has been no. Now, if I had a philanthropic commitment for every call I've gotten, we might be open by now. But it's not only in COVID that I receive these calls. We've known for a long time that a presence of a birth center would be integrated into Boston's robust healthcare landscape, improving public health and outcomes across. So a little story, a volunteer project already, 5 years. I jump for as many grant opportunities as I can. And this week, I was responding to an RFP, and I stumbled on this question that said, what are we doing differently as a result of the community response to George Floyd's murder? I'll pause here for you to take that in. The grant asked, what are we going to do differently as a response? So for $5,000, I painstakingly explained how we are doing nothing differently except doing the labor we always do to center Blackness while grieving. I told them how the crisis of this current moment is familiar to us as people who live and organize under the constant threat of conditions created by white supremacy and heteropatriarchy. Boston's first and only birth center is being built by Black mothers who face increased risk of death and infant mortality in pregnancy and childbirth, while we are working, parenting, and building a healthcare startup in the midst of a global pandemic, while we witness rampant and preventable racial inequity in COVID-19, police violence, and assaults by the media. I told them that what we are doing differently is that we are focusing on healing our hearts, staying radicalized in this moment while holding rage and sadness in our homes and in our communities, and that we remain committed to organizing to actively shift the distribution of power and resources to ensure that people of color and other structurally marginalized communities have access to safe out-of-hospital birth. My sister Ndidi spoke no word of a lie about the inequities. They are not natural. There is nothing inherently higher risk about being pregnant while Black, other than living in a society that is structured on a racial hierarchy with us at the bottom. But there's an important piece to note that when we say 4 times more likely, 200% more often, it's always relative to the white rate. That is a big illusion that we should aim to close the gap to align Black birth outcomes with those of white folks. What I learned in surveying for the birth center was that for white cis women with a graduate degree or higher, earning over $200,000 in the greater Boston area, they reported horrible experiences in childbirth and pregnancy. They felt disrespect. One person reported that the nurses made fun of her vocalizations while she was in labor. And another said she felt like she was birthing in a machine. Let us not be fooled. The maternal health system is not working well for anyone. We have to get clear about this. When we zoom out and look at measures of infant mortality or life expectancy across the 37 OECD or economically developed countries, the US has horrible outcomes compared to those other 37 countries. And get this, listen to me clearly here. If we took the white population of the US as a country in and of itself, it would still fare at the bottom of that scale of those 37 countries. We get just a hair better than the entire United States if the white population of the United States was its own country. What a distraction to try to close the gap to level Black outcomes to those of white folks. So let me pause and make a call into white folks who are here today. Please receive the call to justice and liberation from a place that is clear about your own skin in the game. Do not fight racism because it is bad for Black people. My friend says it's the same reason why we do not want men to fight patriarchy, because they feel bad for women, because they can give that shit up tomorrow. Excuse me. Let's get clear that it's not working well for anybody. Now, let's also be clear. It's better across all measures and outcomes for white folks, but your freedom is an illusion. So my 2 babies were born at home, this one into the loving hands of my mother and highly trained midwives. Hours after my son's birth, we were out on the deck on an unusually warm October day, enjoying food and drink. Somebody said that dark beer makes the milk come in, so I was drinking a beer. I was encircled by midwives who trusted me and my body and who were committed to bearing witness to my power first and foremost. And I hold this experience of my birth with dissonance because I know countless stories of trauma to also be true. So along with my elder midwives, I feel called to be part of a community expanding birth options here in Boston because dissonance is exhausting. Reconciling disharmonious events is exhausting. What does a new world look like when it comes to pregnancy and childbirth? So let's imagine, or reimagine really, because all of our ancestors knew this to be true. Before we had pathologized physiologic birth. So join me for a moment as I wrap up. Close your eyes if you want. Put your hand on your heart, on your womb if you want. Raise a fist if you want. Feel the support of Mother Earth under your feet. Take a deep breath and imagine with me the energy of our first birth center. A beautiful spa-like place that could rival any Newberry Street salon with fine linens, plush robes, infused water and tea. It is lovingly staffed by midwives providing full spectrum care throughout pregnancy, labor, birth, and the postpartum period. There is wraparound care from mental health providers. There's chiropractic, Reiki, yoga, massage, and apothecary with sacred herbs. I see a welcoming, joyful place to relax, to connect, to be seen, and to see others. It is an organization operationalizing equity from who holds the contracts to how the organization is governed to who entrusts us with the care during the most powerful and transformative time in their lives. There is a sense of belonging. And when I listen closely, I can hear children asking questions about bellies and boobies, answered lovingly by caring adults who are witnessing their transformation to sibling and expanding their worldview. There is a calmness in the space that comes with people experiencing healthcare, where our full selves, our bodies, our traumas, and our identities and our relationships are honored. It is led by people of color, and because it is so, everything from policy to space to programming has been designed with an eye to justice and liberation and an eye to checking embodied white supremacy and heteropatriarchy. When I close my eyes, I feel Neighborhood Birth Center as a place where everyone gets free. There have been powerful studies to demonstrate the safety, cost savings, outcomes, and intergenerational healing made powerful by investing in community birth centers. Yet, as in a city as rich in healthcare resources and endowed wealth as Boston, Black, queer, trans, and disabled volunteers are rubbing two pennies together to open our first birth center. Dissonance. The question is now, what is getting in the way? We have to reconcile the dissonance between our espoused belief in equity and justice and our relative inaction, the threat of returning to normalcy, the desire to return to normalcy. Arundhati Roy also wrote, "Another world is not only possible, she is coming. And on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." So when I listen and I tune into a belief in abundance, I know, and when I look at you, I know that there is the wisdom and will to grow and leverage full spectrum capital for this birth center and every birth center around the country that is being asked in this moment, are you open? We need you. Thank you.
When I say Black lives, you say matter. Black lives, Black lives. When I say Black lives, you say matter. Black lives, Black lives. When I say we want, you say justice. We want. When I say we want, you say justice. We want.
The only thing you need to know for the next one is not police.
Money for healthcare. Money for healthcare. Money for schools. Money for schools. Money for children. Money for children. Money for mothers. Money for mothers. Money for transport. Money for transport. Money for schools. Money for schools. Money for food. Money for food. Who got the power? That's true. That's also true. Who got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. Who got the power? What kind of power? Who got the power? What kind of power? Who got the power? What kind of power? The people united will never be defeated. Y'all know that one. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
All right, are you excited? All right. So next, we have Ashley Rose Solomon. Yes, I know someone's already familiar with Ashley Rose. And Ashley is an award-winning Haitian American educator, organizer, poet, and activist in the city of Boston, and actually just globally. This sister her credentials run long, but I just want to say that she is one of the most authentic voices in the city of Boston. If you want to hear the truth, she will tell you the truth. She will give it to you from history, from culture, and just from her spirit. So without any further ado, Ashley Rose Solomon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I thank you all for being here. I have a 7-year-old Black son that's questioning these protests. So you guys standing here, I know we're building something different. For the mothers who spoke before me, Ms. Carla, thank you for always using Barrel's story from plays to poems. And this poem right here, I feel was summoned, when you just did the call and response, we have African griots just in our blood, but storytellers. This poem comes from the ancestral realm, and it's called The Haunting. You let too many of us over. You thought I forgot, thought I didn't remember, but I tried to warn you. When New Orleans drowned, it was from the trail of tears overflowing from Native women and Haitian wives whose husbands you hired to help you win your freedom, only to hang us and blow us up at sea. You thought I was a memory. You didn't taste me in your gumbo, didn't know that I linked hands with my African ancestors under the Atlantic. You didn't know Yemaya had mercy and saved me. My heart became a little brackish, salted by the sodium I was forced to add to my food, insults and wounds to preserve myself from your whips, chains, and politics. I tried to be complacent. And then for 400 years, you stole and encaged my Black babies. Today, you sell their souls to prisons instead of plantations. The kids are kicking back cans of tear gas. They're asphyxiated by your bended knees. They can't breathe through a pandemic called racism that you systemically disguised as COVID-19. Still, you rape me. I hear my granddaughters yelling me too, and I can't take the historical echo. So I put your buildings ablaze. I put fire to tongue. I turned your lullabies into lyrics about lynchings. I remixed Billie Holiday and Ida B. Wells. I taught my babies to go vegan, yet still question your strange fruit. We still hang. I turned their story times and their bed night rides into KKK night rides. I taught them astrology by following the drinking gourd, taught them to master the retrograde of your Mercury, move into the great accelerator and realize that they were the crystal babies with the vision who could see that the revolution would happen in the age of Aquarius. Yes, it's me. Back from another galaxy, the midnight in my melanin you tried to erase from history. You disrespected and destroyed my temples and defecated on my graves in Egypt. You didn't know that a female pharaoh rather spite her nose to stay face. Didn't know that my grandbabies would behead white supremacy and the statue of your son, Christopher Columbus, in the most racist city of Boston. You didn't know that they would resurrect me. A Nubian queen, Amon Arenas, say her name. Sandra Bland, say her name. You didn't know that I was the ghostwriter that penned the post of the morning. I sent it off as a postcard from my daughter, Dr. Maya Angelou. You didn't know that you electing Joy Harjo as your United States Poet Laureate, it was a smoke signal from the ancestral realm, a warning from a siren from the sea to tell your police officers who used to be my land snatchers, who became my great-great-grandson's slave catchers, that in 2020, you don't want to be warring with me. Not for another day, not for another decade, and damn sure not for another century. From this black mother, let my children's children be free in this land that you built on black lives and backs, or forever be haunted by me. From the ancestral realm, thank you guys. For the black mothers who've taken a stand, thank you guys. This is in our blood. The revolution will continue. Thank you. I'm back. Hi. We know we're here and we're here in the spirit of love, but I want to remind all of us here that being here is not enough. It's just not enough, right? We need to hold our elected officials accountable, and they need to be doing what we tell them to do because we put them in office, right? And I'm not a singer, and I'm not a rapper either. But I've been listening to a lot of songs about rebellion and about protest lately. And as we're waiting for our city council president Kim Janey to come to the stage, I wanted to recite some lyrics from Common from the song Glory, because this moment reminded me of it. And I want everybody to put their hands up. Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon. Formed against, yes, glory is destined. Every day, women and men become legends. Sins that go against our sins become sins that go against our skin become blessings. This movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is revisiting us, truant living in us, resistance is us. That's why Rosa said on the bus. That's why we walk through Boston with our hands up. When it goes down, we woman and man up. They say stay down and we stand up. Shots we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop and we ran up. This is my baby right here, guys. This is my youngest, Julian. Hi. He said he's not a baby. Is Kim ready, guys? Oh, and so now, guys, like I said, it's up to us to hold our elected officials accountable. And we have one here with us that's coming to the mic right now. I want to introduce our City Council President, District 7 City Councilor, Kim Janey.
Hey everyone, how's everyone feeling? My name's Kim Janey, and I'm president of the most diverse city council in Boston's history. Yes, and I'm so excited because me and my colleagues have put together an agenda for Black and brown people in this city, and we are united in our fight to get that accomplished. I just want to say a few words about this movement and how beautiful it is to see all of our young people and to be reminded that our young people have mamas. So I'm here in support of all the mamas in the movement. I'm really grateful to Latoya and Marissa and all of the moms behind the scenes who do all the organizing work. That's what fuels our movements. It's always what has fueled our movements, the mamas who are in the background doing the work. So I'm grateful for the mamas. I'm grateful for the young people who are on the front lines every single day with our essential workers and our first responders. I'm grateful that we will not give up. We are not going to go back. We're going to keep pushing forward because we have no choice. Our country right now is at a crossroads. There's a reckoning happening here. And we have to determine what are we going to do right now in this moment to advance social justice, racial justice, economic justice. Because that's also important. And here in this city of Boston, we know that Black households have a net worth of $8. And that the average household for white families is $247,500. That's a $250,000 wealth gap. Now, what are we going to do about that here in Boston? We have an opportunity to do things differently. If we keep with the status quo, we're going to continue with that wealth gap. And that report that came out citing this wealth gap is 5 years old now. So what do we know now with displacement and gentrification 5 years later? What is that wealth gap looking like right now? Well, we have the opportunity to do something different. The city of Boston spends hundreds of millions of dollars on goods and services. We need to make sure that more of that money is being spent right here on local businesses in Boston. We need to support businesses owned by women. We need to support businesses owned by people of color. There's a hearing, a city council hearing on Monday at 3 o'clock. I hope you'll tune in to review equity in purchasing and procurement here in our city of Boston, because we know in the year 2018, we spent $664 million and less than 1% went to local businesses owned by women or businesses owned by people of color. We can do better. We deserve better, don't we? So this struggle is not just about racial justice, it's about economic justice, and it always has been. So we won't rest until we close that gap, till we make sure that everyone in our great city of Boston has an opportunity to thrive in this city, regardless of zip code, regardless of what language you may speak at home, regardless of your country or origin or your religious backgrounds, of who you love. Everyone in this city deserves an opportunity. And that's what this fight is about. And we can't shy away from recognizing that when it comes to fair opportunity, that certain groups have always been left behind. That there is an anti-Black sentiment in this country that we have to deal with. We can't shy away from that. And so when we say Black Lives Matter, we have to mean it. We have to mean it, and we have to show up with action. It's not enough to show up at rallies and protests and have signs and hashtags. We have to have legislative action to follow it up. So I'm grateful that you guys are putting the pressure on. I'm grateful to all the mamas and all the young people in this movement. Keep it up. Join us on Monday, June 29th at 3 o'clock for this hearing. Keep pushing, and don't give up. Thank you so much. Hey. Thank you. I want to also shout out that I know my sister in service, Michelle Wu, was here. I see the chief of staff for my sister in service, Andrea Campbell. I know my sister in service, Liz Miranda, was here. Was Rachel here? And my sister in service, Rachel Rollins, was here. So I just want to shout out the sisters in this movement. Keep it up, you guys. Love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor Kim Janey. I want to let you all know that the counselor has put forth a Black agenda for Boston that we are in support of. And we encourage you to look at it and make sure you sign on it and agitate around it. So that is a concrete action you can do, a homework for today. I want to also make sure we thank so many people. This happened in 2 weeks, and we didn't do it alone. I really want to thank Brianna Miller, Ellie Pimentel, Teresa Rodriguez, Vernay Wilkins, Charmaine Higgins, Morgan Allen, no last name, sorry, Bridgetta Patterson, Marissa Louise, and I also, Marissa. I also want to thank our volunteers. We have about 40 volunteers who signed up within a matter of days, speakers and performers who you've met, Trinity Church Boston, who gave us all of this without asking questions, YW Boston, Union Capital Boston, Neighborhood Villages, the Muncie Group Real Estate made donations unsolicited, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Teak Media, Color is Not a Crime. We had children send care packages from Vermont. We want to thank Hint Water, also reached out and provided water. We want to thank Shawmut Design and Construction. Boston Area Mask Initiative gave us 150 handmade masks, no questions asked. Believe it or not, as well as Fairmont Copley, who believes in Black Lives Matter and gave us their space. So go there. Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, First Teacher, Boston Ujima Project, United South End Settlements, and so many more. And so we know that this could not have been done without so many hands who came in and they just said, what do you need? Next thing you know, we have all this. I know it's raining, so I'm talking fast. I also want to make sure I thank my co-organizer, Latoya, and I did this with love, and you here with love. Listen, 2 Black women doing this together. We refuse to be divided. So thank you. Thank you for coming. And so what we are showing and modeling to the children is that don't let anybody divide you. You are stronger together, and we stand together, and we love each other, and we are going to keep building this movement. And with that said, I'll pass it on to her.
I love all of you. I love you too, Sarah. The first time I met Sarah was before Sarah was a mother. We were supposed to be meeting for coffee, and it was like 3 hours. So this is meant to be, and that was a couple years ago. I know it's starting to rain, so I'm not going to take a lot of your time. But I do want to bring up our state rep, Liz Miranda. She came here to us to talk to us today about the work she's doing in our legislation around the things that are important to us.
Good afternoon, mothers. Now, I'm not a mom yet, but I consider myself a community mom. And for all the community mothers and the allies and the men who stand next to us, I would love to start. I just came from Franklin Park where there was a ride for Black Lives. So I've lost a little bit of my voice, but I want to let you know that there are thousands of people riding through the South End right now, joining in the same commitment. I've been in office 16 months, but I've been a Black woman from Roxbury my whole life. Before I begin, I'd like you guys to repeat after me. I matter. A little louder. I matter. We matter. Black lives been mattered. I want to give a round of applause to all of you that came out today from near and far, especially the children. There is no movement in American history that has not been led by the young and the women. Repeat. I'm going to repeat that. There has been no movement in this country that has not been led by the young people and the women of this country. I'm one of only three Black women in the entire Massachusetts legislature. There are 200 people who are representatives and senators in the state of Massachusetts that likes to believe it's a blue state. I want to remind you it's a blue state until we talk about public safety and criminal justice. For the last 10 days, after I filed HD 5128, an act to save Black lives and to transform public safety, which would ban no-knock warrants, which would make police misconduct records public, which would create a duty to intervene, which would create a pipeline to withhold liability, and to start the divestment of the millions and millions of dollars we spend in public safety that we do not spend in education, in mitigating the housing segregation we created, the poverty we created, and economic disinvestment. I've been getting death threats. People have been calling my personal cell phone, but you know what they won't do? They won't come to Roxbury. They're not coming to Roxbury to tell me that I'm dumb. I try to remind them that I have a Wellesley degree. I graduated with honors. But before I went to Wellesley, I graduated from surviving the streets of Roxbury. Roxbury has a 33-year difference in life expectancy than the Back Bay. 5 bus stops away from Dudley Square, where I used to take the bus in front of BU to go back to Wellesley. People get to live to their 92, while my people and my parents can't live to 59. That is unjust, and we must start teaching our young people now that Massachusetts and Boston were accomplices. We can't walk away and say it just happened in Ferguson. We can't just say it just happened in Minneapolis. We can't just say it just happened in Baltimore or Atlanta, because it has happened here. And unless we have meaningful legislation, it will happen here again. We cannot wait for next session or next year, because Black and brown people, particularly immigrants and those that are documented, who go to work in our companies, our hospitals, and our factories do not feel safe. Policing in Wellesley does not look like policing in Roxbury. That's why we need to ban tear gas. We need to ban kinetic weapons. We need to ban those dogs you love so much, but you use to intimidate us and harm us. So I want to make sure that folks understand that you have to be stretched. You have to be uncomfortable. Some of you are married to people who don't get it. Some of you have parents and family members who don't get it. Some of you are here and still don't get it. And it's okay, because I understand that me, as a Wellesley College educated woman, also have privilege as a Black woman. When I returned back to my community, things were different. I was able to see things differently. And we should be protected to have the same happy, healthy, and safe lives said in our laws, in our Constitution of Massachusetts, and the Constitution of this country. I'll end, because it's starting to rain and the water's not going to hurt nobody. It might hurt my iPad, though. That the quotes of Barbara Jordan. We hear a lot about movement builders. We hear a lot about Dr. King. But people don't talk a lot about Fannie Lou Hamer and Barbara Jordan. There would be no Dr. King without those women. There'd be no Dr. King without a Coretta. So you've got to remember that she kept his legacy alive. She made his birthday a national holiday. She raised those children after he was massacred. So mothers, you have a special role in society to be uncomfortable and make other people uncomfortable, to be inconvenienced and make other people inconvenienced. Because some of you work for companies that sent emails out this week that said Black Lives Matter, but didn't have a woman or a Black person on its board or in its C-suite. You cannot tell other people that Black Lives Matter when you do not practice that in your own companies, in your own churches, in your own schools. Some of you believe that you're not racist, but would not send your kids to the same schools our children are forced to go to. Whether you send your kids to a Catholic school, a private school, a Catholic school, we still got to fix our public schools. Amen. Because the most vulnerable students go there because they don't have a means to go elsewhere. So in the spirit of Barbara Jordan, I want to say 3 codes. A spirit of harmony can only survive if each of us remembers when bitterness and self-interest seem to prevail, that we share a common destiny. All matter, but Black Lives Matter today especially. If the society today allows wrongs to go unchallenged, the impression created, and this is very important, that those wrongs have the approval of the majority. Right? If they don't go challenge it, it makes people believe that the oppressed people like their oppression. We do not like our oppression. We should be ashamed of ourselves to talk about our liberalism and have 3 Black women serving in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And when we add our Asian sisters and our biracial sisters, there are 6. And when we add our brothers, there are 13. 13 out of 200 in the oldest government in America. So we've got homework. We've got work to do. And I just encourage you to understand that we are tired. And the burden is not on Black electeds or Black activists or Black leaders to lead this movement only. We want you to step aside and step beside us. Where you hear us crying, we want you to be an echo. And I want you to make sure you understand that we cannot do this alone. You have to challenge your own families, your own communities, your own companies, so that we can get the justice we deserve. Thank you and have a great day.
That was amazing. I want to recognize Counselor Kenzie Bach. That was the perfect message. We know that we cannot do this movement alone. We did not invent racism. It is not our sole responsibility to solve it. So up next, I'm going to tell you, Counselor Wu will be up as an ally who has been the former president of the council and who has been with us to tell us what's next.
All the mamas out there say, hey! I want to say thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with us. We're starting to feel the drops of love coming down. It's such an honor to be here with my sisters in service, Madam President, Councilor Kim Janey, Rep Liz, bringing down the house, as always, our incredible DA, Rachel Rollins, so many others. I also want to give an extra shout out. I heard Councilor Kenzie Bach is in the house or in Copley Square right now as well. She represents this area, and I want to thank her for being with us. As an Asian American woman, as a mom to 2 little boys, and a caretaker for my own fierce mama, I'm proud to be here today on behalf of all of us allies to say thank you to the organizers and speakers today. Give them some love. We're here to listen to Black women who have been the leaders and the bedrock of the movement for racial justice since the very beginning. We are here to stand together and channel the fierce urgency of mamas for this moment in our city and our country. Allies, we can start by acknowledging our own privilege and working to dismantle racism and anti-Blackness in our daily lives, in our workspaces, in how we raise our children. But let's remember, the bread and butter of structural racism are evasions and procrastinations when it comes to policy. It's past time to act. and to change the system. So here's our call to action. I want all of us to lift our voices together. Turn to your neighbor and say, I commit to march like a mother. Tell your neighbor, I commit to fight like a mother for anti-racist policies. I will listen to Black women. I'll follow the lead of our Black sisters and brothers to end systemic racism. That was a little long. Okay, I'll keep it short. I will speak up and take action. I will hold my elected officials accountable for the world our kids deserve. And this is what we mean. All loud voices now. Safe and healthy communities. Housing we can afford. Closing the racial wealth gap. Nurturing quality public education. Clean air and water and climate justice. Liberation and justice for all. Black Lives Matter. All together, one last time. Black Lives Matter. Thank you all.
All right, guys, we see the rain coming, and we don't want everybody to get too wet. But we thanked everybody for coming out. We want to tell you that this wouldn't have been possible without our village enveloping us. And we want you to see that this is an example, a reflection of the radical power of motherhood, of sisterhood, of a village that supports you. Oh, there, and of my 5-year-old. There we go. And we just thank everybody coming out, especially you, Carla, for sharing your story and sharing your pain with us. And we want to remind everybody, take some water with you if there's water out. Stay hydrated. Stay social distance on your way out. We're going to wrap up a little early because it's starting to clean up. Don't leave trash around. We want to be able to do this again. I really, really want to thank Trinity Church. I want to thank Trinity Boston Connects, who really stepped up for us. ASL interpreters, they came through for us, guys, to make this an inclusive event. You sign up. Go to marchlikeamother.org, guys. Marchlikeamother.org. We have a website. Please sign up so you can stay connected to us and so we can continue this movement. And now, Keiko, come here. This is our partner in crime. Okay. She helped all this when she stood up our site for us in about 15 minutes. Boom, she did it. Everything we need, she made sure we were organized today, and I want to thank her publicly for that. Thank you, Keiko. There you go. No, that's for you. Oh, that's for me? Oh, I'm giving it away. No, that's for you. It's for you. It's for you. And we want to go in the tradition, in the spirit, and of Black love and something we do. Come on. Now Marissa stepped up too. Marissa, come here. Now, she's going to lead us in a song as we walk out. Yes, you are. Come on. Here we go. What we ain't going to do, Marissa?
Ain't going to let nobody turn us around. Oh, wait a minute. Come on. Give it a round of applause, right? All right. I thought I was leading. Okay. All right. No, you got it. Okay. All right. Does everybody know the words? Sweet honey. Yeah, you're going to learn it. So. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Say it with me. Turn me around. Turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody. I'm gonna keep on walking. Keep on talking. Marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let racism. Let me hear you. Ain't gonna let racism turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let hatred, oh, turn me around. Turn me around, ain't gonna let hatred turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking. Let me hear ya. Keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Uh-oh, okay, all right. We're gonna keep this going. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. Real loud, turn me around. Turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Last one. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom's land. Amen.
Thank you all. Don't forget, marchsecondmother.org. Stay in touch with us. Thank you.
We want to quit moving until we get what we deserve.